All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us here for day 2 of the Relax, Relate, and Release Challenge. My name is Sharika Matthews of Live Life Beyond Barriers. You guys know me by now, so thank you again for taking the time out to either be here live with me or for watching the recording of this video. So we are into day 2. I hope you guys got the emails and everything I've been sending you. I've already sent you the recording, both the audio and the video recording of day 1, where we talked about it all starts in the mind. And what we did yesterday, we went through several different exercises for you to get your thoughts and your feelings under control so that you can release all of the anxiety, release all of the mental stress, and release all of the mental worries that's really bogging you down and keeping you from really being your best self. Today, we are going to talk about perfection is not required. Also, let me go back a little bit. Also, yesterday, so I sent you the recordings yesterday evening. This morning, you should have gotten your inspirational email as well as your worksheet from yesterday containing your notes. So if you haven't gotten your email, check your spam box. If it's not in your spam box, send me an email. Let me know, hey, I did not get my recording, I did not get my inspirational email, and I did not get my worksheet from yesterday. So definitely make sure you have that, because what that is going to be a toolkit. It's going to be a toolbox for you to reach into anytime you need to release some stress, anytime you need to relax, anytime you need to clear your mind of all the things that's kind of going on right now. Okay, so that's what happened over the last 24 hours. Today, what we're talking about today is perfection is not required. Because one of the reasons I dedicated a whole day to this is whether or not we admit it, a lot of times we are seeking perfection. We want the perfect relationship. We want the perfect job. We want the perfect body. We want the perfect outfit, the perfect hair. We want all these things to be just right. So much so that we are willing to unload a dishwasher because it wasn't loaded perfectly by our kids, thereby creating more work for yourself, thereby creating more stress for yourself, thereby actually adding to your anxiety, which most of us don't need any more anxiety. We don't need any more stress in our lives. And so this is your reminder, and I want you to write this down. Perfection is not required. The only thing that's required of you is to be present and to give it your best. Do what is required to get the job done, but don't expect for it to be perfect. But let me be clear about what perfection is. Perfection is simply the state of being or a condition where a person or a thing or a situation is free from any flaws, is free from any defects or anything like that. And we tend to seek perfection not just in our living situation or in situations and things. We seek perfection in ourselves. We seek perfection in the people that we date. We seek perfection out of our kids. We seek perfection out of our spouses. And in reality, nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. The only person who walked this earth who was perfect was Jesus. And that is because he was fully man and fully God, meaning that he perfected the process of operating in 100% alignment with God's will and God's purpose for his life, meaning that his flesh did not have control over his body, meaning that his mind did not have control over his body, meaning that his ego did not have control over his body. And that was the only way he was able to live a perfect life, because he was operating all the time, day in, day out from the Spirit. And although we may strive to achieve that, we may strive to have a perfect relationship with God and so that we can create a perfect life. But because of the way we are wired as humans, perfection is not something that's actually going to be guaranteed in this life. And so I want to remind you from here on out, release yourself from the weight. Release yourself from the requirement of being perfect. I'm going to read. I was at the gym earlier today, and I was listening to a song by Beyonce and Eminem, and it's called Walk on Water. And Beyonce's verse or her chorus line that she does, I think speaks volumes. I'm going to read it to you. It says, I walk on water, but I ain't no Jesus. I walk on water, but only when it freezes. 'Cause I'm only human, just like you. Making my mistakes. Oh, if you only knew. I don't think you should believe in me the way that you do, 'cause I'm terrified to let you down. That speaks so much volume to me, and is so appropriate for today, because oftentimes when we're seeking perfection, or we are putting on a facade of perfection, like we have the perfect relationship or the perfect marriage or the perfect state of existence, the perfect happiness, is usually a facade. We are saying, yes, I can walk on water, but what the rest of the world don't know is that the only time you can walk on water is when the water freezes over and it's solid. And so I wanted to read that to you along with our theme for tonight, to remind you perfection is not required. And I want to share with you another quote here from Jaron Lanier, and it says, seeking perfection in human affairs is a perfect way to destroy them. Meaning that when you are seeking perfection in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day presence, in your day-to-day responsibility, it's the perfect way to create more chaos. It's a perfect way to create more stress. It is the perfect way to create more overwhelm. And that's not really what you want to do. So what I want to talk about tonight is, and tonight's not going to be nearly as heavy as yesterday was, but it's still going to be powerful information that you need to apply to your life so that you can learn to have a more relaxed state of being. So you can learn to have more of a unmessableness in your day-to-day affairs, no matter how much chaos is going on around you. So we're going to go into the lesson, but I'm also going to give you some exercises for you to do to kind of help hone in this skill. So if you haven't gotten your paper and pencil already, go ahead and grab it, because we're going to start taking some notes here, okay? So one thing about perfection I do also want you to know is that perfection is not a sign of maturity. Perfection is not a sign of responsibility. Perfection is not a rite of passage or a coming of age. I really want you to understand that, because especially for those of us who are overachievers, I know, although I never considered myself a perfectionist, oftentimes I wanted to be perfect for my parents. I wanted to be perfect for the world. It wasn't about everything going perfectly. I did not want anyone to know that certain things were not perfect, if that makes any sense. I felt a sense of shame. I felt a sense of obligation to not share with people my struggles, to not share with people some of the cracks that are in my glass house, because I know that so many people look up to me, because I know that people see me as a mentor, see me as a coach. And so I wanted to have this state of perception that my life is pretty much together all the time. And I'm here to tell y'all right now, I am human just like you. It may look like I walk on water, but half the time is because it's frozen. The other half of the time because Jesus is carrying me. So that's really what's happening. And so just understand and just know that just because you have some imperfection, just because your house isn't perfectly clean, just because you may not embody your ideal of a perfect wife or your ideal of a perfect mother, doesn't mean that you are worth any less. It doesn't mean that your value decreases. So you want to separate your ideal of what perfection is for you away from your value, away from your worth, because your ability to be perfect has nothing to do with your value. As a matter of fact, your ability to be imperfect actually adds to your value. There is a Japanese, what I want to call it, a Japanese tradition, old time tradition, where if there was a crack in porcelain or a crack in any, like a crack in a plate or a crack in a cup or a crack in a glass, instead of trying to put it back together or throw it away completely, they will actually fill the cracks with gold, because they believe that the cracks add beauty. They believe that the cracks add character. They believe the cracks had a story to tell. And so they fill the cracks with gold in order to put the object back together, because they weren't trying to restore it to its former state of being. They wanted the story to be told on how the crack got there. And so you have to see yourself as that. You have to see your life as that. That all the cracks of imperfection that you see in your life, and all the cracks of imperfection you see in yourself, and all the cracks of imperfection that you see in other people, see it through the eyes of love. See it through the eyes of the Japanese, and fill it with gold. And understand that all those imperfections are adding character and substance to the person, character and substance to yourself, character and substance to the situation. So I wanted to throw that out there real quickly. So now, before we talk about what we can do to release this self-imposed obligation to be perfect, we want to talk about why did we put this self-imposed obligation to be perfect on ourselves. And it's going to come from about 4 things. And you might want to write this down. So what's driving your desire for perfection in your life? The first desire, the first driver is your desire for control. Your desire for control. You want to control your life. You want to control the outcome. You want to control the situation. You want to control the people. You want to control your feelings. You want to control, and control. But the root of that desire to control comes from your it comes from your lack of trust. It comes from your lack of trust in God. It comes from your lack of trust in yourself, and it comes from your lack of trust in other people. And that is what's driving it. Because think about this here. When you are seeking perfection, let's say you want a perfect husband, right? And so when your husband is not perfect, you get all kinds of angry and all kinds of upset. And you even take his imperfection personally, as if he chose to be imperfect, as an attack on you. And which causes you to be angry, causes you to be stressed out, causes you to feel overwhelmed. But in reality, your reaction is really based on your lack of trust in him and in your lack of trust in God. You're saying that I am so angry with you for being imperfect, and I'm taking it so personally right now because I don't trust God to put somebody in my life who will intentionally hurt me. That's really what you're saying. Or you're saying that I don't trust you. I don't trust your intentions. I don't trust your character. That's what you're saying when you're trying to control somebody else, or you're trying to, or you get so upset and so emotionally wound up when someone or something doesn't go perfectly, doesn't go according to your plan. It is all because you lack trust. And again, trust is a whole separate course that I do, because without trust, it is almost impossible for you to live a fulfilling life. Without trust, you cannot have fulfilling relationships. Without trust, you cannot be happy, because if you cannot trust yourself, you're going to have a hard time making decisions. If you can't trust God, you're going to have a hard time going with the flow and taking risks and taking chances of going after opportunities. Without trust, it's going to be so difficult for you to advance in society, to attain the influence and the affluence and the titles and the leadership positions you really desire. It is about near impossible, because if you don't trust other people, guess what? They're not going to trust you. Again, your outer world reflects your inner world. If you have trust issues on the inside, you're going to have trust issues on the outside. So if you're interested in learning more about my Overcoming Trust Issues course, send me a message here in Zoom, or just email me, and I'll show you how you get a hold of that. But that's the first thing that's driving your desire for perfection, is your desire for control. The second thing that's driving your desire for perfection is that you are overcompensating. You are overcompensating for some other area in your life that you feel you are lacking in, or you are overcompensating for a hurt that you feel. So for example, you may be overcompensating, or you may be, yes, you may be overcompensating in your role as a mother because of a past hurt that you experienced with your own mother 45 years ago. And so now you are seeking to be this perfect mother because you don't want your children to experience the hurt that you experienced at the hands of your mother. I mean, your experiences are real, your pain points are real. But you cannot let your pain points drive you to a place of insanity, trying to be perfect, trying to avoid things. Because what ends up really happening is that the very person you're trying to avoid being, or the very thing you're trying to avoid not doing, you're trying to avoid not being like your mother, you want to be a better mother, and you're so gripped on being a better mother, what ends up happening is you end up being just like your mother. You end up being just like your mother. So you want to recognize the areas in which you are seeking perfection, especially with your roles, with your role as a woman, with your role as a teacher, with your role as an employee or a caregiver, with your role as a mother, or your role as a spiritual advisor. Are you trying to, is there anything from your past, are there any emotional wounds that have not healed that you actually want to cover up and hide? And you're doing that by seeking perfection in another area. So think about that. It's overcompensating for some other area that you feel lack in. The third thing, which I hope none of you guys are really struggling with, but if you are, it is absolutely okay. None of us are perfect. The third thing that's driving your need to be perfect is simply your ego and your arrogance, especially when it comes to our relationships, especially when it comes to other people. Oftentimes, we hold people to standards of perfection, knowing that they cannot reach these standards, as a way to stroke our own ego, as a way to make us feel good, as a way to say, yep, I knew it. I knew I was smarter than you, or I knew I was better than you, or I knew that that I was a better worker than you. You are doing it from a place of ego and arrogance. But again, if you are in that place, very simple, very easy to overcome that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So the fourth thing that's driving your desire for perfection is simply that you are searching for happiness. If you've ever said, if things were perfect, if my finances were perfect, or if my marriage was perfect, or if my kids were perfect, or if I had the perfect career, or if I lived in the perfect neighborhood, I would just be happy. Things would be so much better. I would be full of happiness and joy. That is you seeking happiness. But here's the truth about happiness. The moment you attach it to someone or something that can come and go, so does your happiness. You see, happiness has to start from within. Your peace has to start from within, because you are really the main constant in your life. You and the God that's within you. So if your happiness does not start here, instead, your happiness starts with your marriage, your happiness starts with your church, your happiness starts with your job, your happiness starts with your children. All those things are fickle. All those things, they have temper tantrums, they come in and out, they do wrong and all this other stuff. As long as you attach your happiness to all of those things, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much work you do, no matter how high of a standard you set for all these things, you will not attain real happiness. Your happiness is going to go up and down and up and down and up and down, all because you have attached your happiness to something that is fleeting. Okay, so hey, how are you, Karma? I'm kind of just getting started here, so you haven't missed a whole lot. Okay, can you see me? Okay, I see your screen is frozen a little bit. Okay. Well, I'm gonna keep going. Hopefully you can see me just fine. So, so those are the four things that is actually driving your desire for perfection. The first thing is your desire for control. Your second thing is overcompensating for something you feel you are lacking in your life. The third thing is simply ego and arrogance. And the fourth thing is that you are looking for happiness. And so there is this quote by Kerry Washington that I love, and I have it in one of the books that I wrote that I want to share with you. She has this quote, and it's I don't know if this is a poem or whatnot, but she titles it, I Am Perfectly Imperfect. And she says, I do not have to be perfect. All I have to do is show up and enjoy the messy, imperfect, beautiful journey of my life. It is a trip more wonderful than I could have ever imagined. And that's really the state that we all want to get to, is to be okay with being perfectly imperfect, being okay with having a perfectly imperfect life, being okay with having a perfectly imperfect relationship. So how do we actually get to that state of being? How do we get to this place of creating the mindset, creating the attitude, creating the state of being perfectly imperfect? So I'm going to give you 6 things here. The first thing, which is really, really easy to do, is simply cut yourself some slack. Show yourself the same grace and the same mercy that God gives you. Because if God required us to be perfect, we all be dead right now. We all will be dead right now. God does not require us to be perfect. God does not require our house to be perfectly clean. God does not require our relationships to be perfectly loving all the time. There is no requirement to be perfect. So we have to release ourselves, cut ourselves some slack, and release from ourselves this mental requirement that we put on ourselves to be perfect. Because once you, especially having the requirements to be perfect women, to be perfect mothers, to be perfect wives, to be perfect girlfriends, to be the perfect person for your family. And all these little things is really driving us. Release ourselves from that, because having that high standard for yourself of being without flaw, being without mistakes, being without, your imperfections, that is what drives some people crazy. I don't know if I don't know if this is still a medical condition. I didn't look this up before tonight, but I remember years ago, probably back in the 90s, 80s, and 90s, there were a lot of women being diagnosed with nervous breakdowns. And it's probably still happening today. They may just call it by a different name. But so many women were suffering from nervous breakdowns, meaning that they were in such a state of stress, such a state of worry and anxiousness, that they literally just about lost their minds. Half of them had to be hospitalized for a day or two. Some of them had to be physically removed from their homes, physically removed from their environments, in order to get their minds together, get their lives back together. And so you want to avoid that state of being. And the first place you start with is yourself. Release yourself from this requirement to be perfect, and just simply cut yourself some slack. And the second thing is to do that for the people around you. And this is so true for those of us who are leaders, those of us who are mothers, those of us who are sisters and mentors and stuff like that. We want the very absolute best for our children. We want the very absolute best for our brothers and sisters. We want the very absolute best for our friends and our family. And so out of love, we often push them to be their best. We often push them to give them their all. But then when they make a mistake, or when they show that they have some imperfections, then we tend to do two things: either begin to judge them and criticize them in order to make them perfect, or we begin to value them less because they are not perfect, because they not live up to the standards that you have set for them. So the same slack that God shows you, The same slack that you are now showing yourself, you have to show that to other people and remind yourself that their flaws, that their imperfections, that the things, their quirks and stuff, it's all okay. They are not required to be perfect either. But a word of caution, know the difference between having a flaw and being a bad person, being a person with poor character. Because let's say, for example, you have a requirement for someone to be honest with you. And you have this expectation that they should be honest with you 100% of the time. Now, is that realistic? Maybe, maybe not. I think people are probably honest about 98.9% of the time. Every once in a while, somebody tells a white lie. But if you discover that a person has a habit of not telling the truth, has the habit of being a habitual liar, has the habit of not being upfront and stretching the truth and hiding things and being deceitful, that is bad character. And people with bad character, they do not have a place in your life. I don't care if they're your children, if they are your husband, or whatever place they have in your life. People with bad character do not belong in your life. And when you continue to keep people in your life with bad character, that also adds to the stress. That also adds to the anxiety. That also keeps you from being able to relax. Think about that. Like, if you are living in a house with someone that you know is always lying to you, can you relax? No, because you don't know what they're going to do. You have no clue what they're going to do, because they said they're going to go right, they're going to go, backwards. They said they're going to go up, they're going to go to the left. So make sure that you really understand the difference between somebody being imperfect and somebody with bad character. And the simplest way that you can do to determine someone has bad character is to observe them. See if their words match their actions. See if the things that they do are for their benefit only. Because people who have good character, they care about other people. They're not trying to get over on other people, and they're not trying to seek only things that make them feel good. They care about you. They care about others. See how they treat their mother. See how they treat animals. People who treat animals well tend to treat people well. So that's how you can tell whether or not someone has good character with just some simple flaws, or they have bad character. And simple flaws, I'm thinking things like, okay, they're chronically 15 minutes late. Okay, that's not something that's detrimental to a relationship. It just kind of requires you to show them some grace, because they cannot be on time to save their lives. So those are the type of flaws I'm talking about there. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is to be flexible and adaptable. When I think about who we are as women, and think about the Spirit of God, or think about who God is. God is represented by God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. I often think, and this is probably not scriptural, but it's just kind of how I see it in my mind. I see it in my mind as if God is the husband, the Holy Spirit is the wife, and God, Jesus, is the child, is the offspring. And so I often equate women to the Holy Spirit, because women have a greater sense of intuition. And let me back up here. Women have a greater sense of intuition, and it's simply because our intuition is the Holy Spirit, right? And so when we are in line, when we are in tune with the Holy Spirit in our lives, we can begin to flow like the Holy Spirit. When you think about the Spirit, it's without form. Spirit takes on the form of what it is it possesses, which also reminds me of water. So I like to think of us as women as spirits and or as water. And water just simply flows. Water simply goes where it needs to go, does what it needs to do. It doesn't make up a huge fuss. It doesn't force anything. It just goes. And so we want to learn how to move and how to flow like water. And you do that by coming more in tune with the Holy Spirit, which is your intuition. It requires you to be still. It requires you to listen. It requires you to be in divine flow. It requires you, when the Holy Spirit tells you, go left instead of going right, your response is, okay, I will go left. Not, oh, well, I plan on going right for the past 6 months and I've lined up all of this and blah, 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 blah. No, it's okay for plans to change. It's so funny I'm saying this because this past weekend, I attended a friend of mine's birthday. She was celebrating her birthday. And initially, she's celebrating the whole weekend. And initially, I told her that Saturday night would be the best night for me. And so as the weekend was coming, I was like, hey, I'll be available Friday night. So I'll meet you for dinner Friday night. Her response is, well, I'm just so confused. When we talked 2 weeks ago, you said Saturday was your best night. I was like, yeah, I did 2 weeks ago. But now it's now, and Friday is better. Well, I just don't understand. You said this. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's okay for plans to change. It's okay for people to change their minds. It's okay to just simply go with the flow. Me changing from Friday to Saturday night, and I let you know in advance, did not affect your plans. It did not bring harm to anybody. So we have to learn to not hold on so tight to our preconceived notions, not hold on so tight to our plans. Because remember what I said earlier, one of the things that drives our need for perfection is our desire for control. So you have to learn to let go of that control, which is where the saying comes from, let go and let God. Okay, so I am breathing, I am being still, I am being quiet. God told me to go left instead of right. All right, well, I don't know why. I got to go left instead of right, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I trust, like that goes back to what we said earlier, I am going to trust the voice of God and the Spirit of God to lead me right. And when you get to a state of trust, trusting yourself, trusting the Spirit of God that's within you, then you don't have a need to seek perfection. You don't have a need to seek control, because you know that all things are happening in divine order. You know that everything that God leads you to is working for your greater good. But if, this is something else that a lot of us are afraid of, but if in the off chance that you misheard, that you actually made a mistake in judgment, God still has the power to correct your wrongs. That's what the verse means when he says, I will go before you, make your crooked places straight. God can correct your mistakes. God can correct your wrongs. God has the power to correct anything and everything. And so when you are in the state of knowing that God is working all things together for your good, when you're in the state of knowing that even though you may be stubborn or you may, still go right when God told you to go left, it's all going to be okay, because he can still correct those mistakes. All right, so that's number 3. Number 4 is, instead of striving for perfection, strive for correction. Strive for perfection and strive for progress. I'm kind of combining two here. When we think about a race, and you guys have heard us talk, or you've heard the story, the nursery rhyme, or not nursery rhyme, the children's story about the tortoise and the hare, right? And the hare won the race. The hare got to his, I'm sorry, the tortoise, the turtle, let's call it a turtle. I don't know why they call it a tortoise, but the turtle won the race because it sought progress. It didn't care how slow it went. It didn't care what the weather was. that turtle continued to put one foot in front of the other until it attained its goal. It wasn't worried about perfect form. It wasn't worried about the perfect outfit. It wasn't worried about the perfect weather conditions. It just simply focused on doing what it needed to do in order to attain the goal, which is, for us in modern day terms, maybe to attain the money, to attain the peace, to attain, the relationship with your children, to attain the relationship with your husband. Whatever your goal is, aim for progress, because progress is what's going to move you forward. Because in the pursuit of our day-to-day lives, in the pursuit of us growing and being and becoming, it is all about movement. But think about what happens when you're kind of stuck on perfection. When you're stuck on perfection, the only things that move are really your mind and your emotions. Your mind begins analyzing and thinking about all the things you need to do to get this right, to get this perfect. And then your emotions are in movement as well, because you're feeling anxious, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling inadequate because you didn't achieve perfection. You're beating yourself up. And when you beat yourself up, it's the same thing as beating yourself down. When you're beating yourself down, you can't move. You're beating yourself down, you can't move forward. You are actually going down. You're rooted in this place that you really don't want to be in. So that's why you want to focus more on progress than on perfection. Focus on forward movement. Focus on your goal of having a great relationship. Focus on your goal of having, the great job, or whatever the case may be. And I want to add a side note here, that perfection is perception. Instead of focusing on the traditional definition of the word perfection, which is a condition or a state of being without flaw or being without defects, shift that. Focus more on what's perfect for you. And I've said this as I coach women and men too on dating and things of that nature, is that I tell people all the time, there are plenty of good men in the world. There are plenty of good women in the world. The goal, though, is finding the man that's perfect for you. The goal is finding the woman that is perfect for you. Doesn't mean they're going to be a perfect man. Doesn't mean they're going to be a perfect person, a perfect woman. But perfect for you is someone who loves you the way you need to be loved. Perfect for you is someone who's going to serve you and help you grow the way you need to be grown. The perfect person for you is someone to help you come together and move towards an agreed upon goal, whatever that is for you. Because what's good for me may not be good for you. And I remember talking to another friend of mine just about relationships and marriage and stuff. You see so many people who say, oh, I couldn't be married to a man like that. How do you put up with him? He don't have any ambition. He's boring. He don't do this and he don't do that. But what people forget is, just because he don't satisfy you doesn't mean he's not satisfying her. He comes home every night. He brings his paycheck home to his woman every night. He supports his woman in whatever she wants to do. So yes, he may not be perfect for you, but it doesn't mean that he's not a good person, and it doesn't mean that he isn't perfect for her. So remember that perfection or being perfect is a matter of perception. So get in your mind, what is perfect for you? That's actually, I'm going to make that your homework assignment. Define what's perfect for you. What is the perfect home life for you? What is the perfect romantic relationship for you? What is the perfect career or job for you? What is your perfect weekend like for you? What is your perfect week like for you? And when you're defining these things, it's not about creating something where there are no flaws, that there are no mistakes, that there are no struggles or situations. It just means that you are creating a life that you can handle. I'm trying to remember this quote. I don't remember the quote verbatim, but it basically says, don't wish for less struggles, or don't, I'm trying to think of how it's worded. Don't Don't be overcome by the struggles of the world. Instead, realize that you are getting stronger. Or don't pray for fewer struggles or fewer storms. Pray for greater strength. So your life is not about the lack or removing the things that are meant to grow you. You want to create a life, create a relationship that builds up your spiritual muscles, that builds up your mental muscles, that builds up your emotional muscles, so that you can handle with ease anything that comes your way. It's kind of like, it's literally like lifting weights, right? If like in the beginning, when you first encounter something in your life, lifting a 3-pound weight is going to be hard. But the more you do it, the stronger you get. And then you're going to progress to 5-pound weights, and you progress to 10-pound weights, and you progress to like 20-pound weights. And before you know it, you have a situation that comes in your life that's the size of a 3-pound weight. You get that thing, you're like, oh, this is easy. I can handle that, because you over here lifting 20-pound weights. And that's the state that you want to get into. You want to get in the state of building your spiritual muscles, your emotional muscles, and your mental muscles, so that when things come, you're not worried about making it perfect. You're not worried about anything going wrong. You're actually in a state of ease. You're in a state of peace, because you know that you have been training up your muscles. You know that you have been studying and practicing and praying and putting yourself in a position to be ready for when things come. Perfection is just perception. So what do you want to be like? What is your perfect being? What is your perfect state of being? Who do you want to become, and what does she look like? And she doesn't have to be perfect. She can be that person who, your husband acts a fool, and you just remain calm, and you smile, and you sit back, and you're so calm and stuff, and your husband's like, oh Lord, what's wrong with her? Because you have achieved the state of ease, the state of being. So again, define for yourself what perfection is, and don't make it so that it's without struggle or without flaws or without any type of resistance. But design it so that you know that you can overcome any resistance. You know you can overcome any storm, because you are strong, because you are still, because you are spiritually aligned with who God says you are. Okay, so I just want to throw that in there real quickly. So back to our notes here. Don't strive for perfection. Strive for correction, and strive for progress. So let's talk about correction. It's okay to correct yourself. It's okay to say, yeah, I really messed it up. But I'm not going to beat myself up, because I am only human. But instead, I'm going to course correct. Okay, I should have went left, but I went right. So I'm going to get off this right path and get over here on this left path of where I need to be. I was supposed to save $500, but instead I spent $400. So I'm going to get off of this path of spending $400 and get back on this path over here for saving my $500. I was supposed to lose 20 pounds, but instead I'm over here eating chocolate chip cookies. Had 2 today. I'm over here eating chocolate chip cookies and cinnamon rolls and all this good stuff. So I'm going to get off of this road over here and get over here on this road to healthy eating. I'm going to constantly correct myself, not beating myself up, but correcting from a place of love, so that I can achieve my ultimate goal. Not so I can be perfect, not that my journey is going to be perfect, not that all of my decisions are going to be perfect, not that my household is going to be perfect. I'm just going to course correct. I'm not going to react every time my husband picks a fight with me. I'm not going to react every time my kids just bounce off the wall. I'm going to course correct. I might start off cussing them out, which I hope you don't do. But if you do, I might start off by cussing them out. But I'm going to stop, catch myself, walk away to gather my thoughts, walk away to get myself back centered, course correction, and then come back and operate from my place of knowing who I am. So I hope that made sense to you. So don't strive for perfection. Strive for constant correction and constant progress. And then last but not least, and this is I wrote this being funny, but it's actually a serious thing that I do. So when things don't go your way, respond with simply, it's okay, all is well, nobody died. Taking on that attitude and that perception reminds you that that is not catastrophic. It reminds you that having an imperfect life, having an imperfect relationship, having an imperfect bank account, or an imperfect casserole, or whatever it is you were cooking, nobody died from it. It's not catastrophic. As long as nobody died, as long as nobody ended up in the hospital with some life-threatening injury or some life-threatening disease, then it is all right. All is well. You have to use your words to talk yourself out of perfection. Use your words to talk yourself off of that ledge of striving for that perfection that creates more anxiety, that creates more worries, that creates more stress. Literally say out loud, it is all right. It is okay. All is well. Nobody died. Okay? So those are some things that you want to do or start practicing in your day-to-day life to overcome this desire for having the perfect life. Okay? So last but not least, I want to give you 4 exercises here. I want you to write it down, and I'm also going to email it to you in the notes for today as well. 4 activities to kind of break your habit of trying to create perfection in your life. So the first activity is this. I want you to think about 3 areas of your life where you tend to stress about being perfect. It could be having the perfect body. It could be, having the perfect house or making sure your house is in perfect order. It could be, it could be having the perfect relationship or being the perfect person for a relationship. What are 3 areas where you get caught up into this trap of seeking perfection and going after perfection? So think of those 3 areas, write it down. And then what I want you to do is write out an anti-perfection statement, meaning that if you are seeking a perfect body, your anti-perfection statement is simply this: I am already perfect for who God created me to be. My body, I love my body just the way it is because it serves me perfectly, it moves me perfectly, it energizes me perfectly. You see, so you're shifting your position from a place of focusing on having no flaws to a place of acceptance of who you are and where you are. If your area of seeking perfections in your relationship, you're striving to have the perfect romantic relationship, then your anti-perfection statement is simply going to be, my relationship is perfectly imperfect. I love him just the way he is. He loves me just the way I am. These imperfections are not deal breakers. He's still alive. I'm still alive. All is well. My relationship is perfectly imperfect. You see what I'm saying? So that's the first exercise. Write out 3 areas of your life where you get caught in the pursuit of perfection, and then write an anti-perfection statement. And then I want you to just simply say it out loud. Repeat it out loud as often as you need to in order to kind of pull yourself out of the trap of seeking perfection. So that's the first exercise I want you to do. The second exercise I want you to do is, you remember the analogy or the story I told you about the Japanese, of how they fill the cracks in with gold? That's what I want you to do about some of the flaws you think you have and some of the mistakes that you have had. So use your mistakes, use your flaws as an opportunity to learn and to grow. Meaning that, let's go into the finances. Let's say that your intention was to save $500, but you fooled around and spent $400 instead of saving $500. So what you're going to do, you're going to do it from a place of love and gentleness, is simply to say, yeah, so I did not save that $500 like I said I was. I made a mistake. But I'm human. I gave into a temptation, but thank God that I can actually course correct and I could still meet my $500 goal by changing the end date. So what you're doing is you've recognized that there was a temptation, you are not beating yourself up, and you are still setting a goal to achieve or you're still have a plan to achieve the goal that you set out to achieve. So you want to turn your mistakes into opportunities to learn and to grow. And that's kind of the activity of filling in the cracks with the goal. Okay, I spent the $400 because I found a pair of shoes I really didn't need, but I really like. So my learning opportunity here was I actually have a shoe fetish. I love shoes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay out of the shoe store when my goal is to save $500. I'm not going to go online shopping when I know my goal is to save $500. So I'm going to learn and to grow by practicing discipline so that I can achieve that goal of saving $500 like I said I would. So that's the second activity. The third activity, the third activity is to unconditionally love yourself when you make a mistake. Because again, we are usually hardest on ourselves. So when you make a mistake, you actually have to say, you know what? I made a mistake. I spent the $400, but I still love myself, but I am still worthy, but I am still valuable, but I am still loved. Remind yourself on a constant, consistent basis that in spite of your mistakes, in spite of your flaws, you are still worthy, you are still valuable, and you are still loved. So that's number 3. And number 4, pay attention when other people make mistakes. Let's say you go to work tomorrow and you get an email from someone with like 5 misspelled words. Instead of laughing and judging them, recognize that they're just being normal. Recognize, go through your email box tomorrow and see how many emails you have with misspelled words. And what you're going to come to realize is that everybody makes mistakes. It's actually normal to be imperfect. So tomorrow, I want you to pay attention to the mistakes other people make. Not from a place of judgment, but from a place of simply recognizing that it is normal to make mistakes. Okay? So those are the 4 exercises I want you guys to do tonight and tomorrow. And before we go, I want to read to you another quote that I absolutely love. It says, "There is nothing more rare nor more beautiful than a woman being unapologetically herself, comfortable in her perfect imperfection. To me, that is the true essence of beauty." And that's by Dr. Steve Maraboli. All right, you guys. So I hope that this lesson was a blessing to you. If you have any questions, there is a chat box here in Zoom. You can type in your questions, or you can just simply respond to one of the emails I've sent you already if you have any questions about anything I said here today. So expect a couple emails from me. I'll email you the video from tonight, and I'll email you the attachment, the PDF attachment that has your assignment that I want you to do over the next 24 hours. And then tomorrow, be on the lookout for your inspirational email as well, just to kind of set the tone for your day. All right? And tomorrow's topic is getting it all done. Because one of the things the reason that you're probably here anyway is because you have so much on your plate, because you have so much to do. And that is why you're stressed. That's why you're worried. That's why you're so anxious. So how can I get all the stuff done that's on my plate and be relaxed? How can I be a wife and a mother and a caretaker and an employee and a business owner and a pet sitter and a sister and a mother and all this other stuff, all these things, and still operate from a place of ease, operate from a place of relaxation, operate from a place of being in divine flow? So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow is probably going to be another heavy day. Today, I think, was a little bit of a light day. Yesterday was a heavy day. So tomorrow is probably going to be a heavy day. I'm going to give you a lot of information, a lot of tools, because this is the one area I believe that most of you guys came here for, is how do I move with ease and grace in all of my day-to-day activities, roles, and responsibilities. So join me back here, same link at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time for day 3 of our Relax, Relate, and Release challenge. Okay? All right, if you have no questions for me, I don't see anything in the chat room right now. If you don't have any questions for me, I'll sign off for tonight. If you do have a question and you don't want to ask the question publicly, then just send me an email and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. All right, you guys, again, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Have a good evening.